Hey guys, I wanted to make a video about the number one thing that is standing in your way from being happier. And what it is the a very simple piece of confusion, which is that of familiarity and safety. And what you'll find is, like, if you're somebody or if you have friends that you see that are miserable and they aren't enjoying their lives, maybe they would, to keep it in the social anxiety field, like um, maybe they're working dead end jobs that they find no value in and they don't have any desire to communicate with people at work to make things better, or maybe they think that they're trapped there because they're afraid to go out and make um, a commitment to try to find a new job because maybe that's scary for them. Um, and you have that sunk cost fallacy kind of working against you of like, well, I'm already here and I've already overcome all of these challenges to get in the door, so I'm just going to stay right where I am. Um, you might, so that's one example of that. You have the, you have to understand something. When you are little, like the thing that matters to you most is familiarity. You ever notice how little kids will do that thing where they're like, I want the blue cup, only the blue cup. And you're like, Jesus Christ, kid, like, chill out a little bit. Like, this other cup is just fine. And you're right, it is. But to them, when their world is still pretty small, like literally, and they just haven't been exposed to things as much, like that blue cup represents stability, represents the something that they know, and so it feels familiar, just like your parents feel familiar. You want love and attention from your parents, and so whatever the things are that you're exposed to the most become the most familiar to you, and whatever that is, whether it's an abusive situation, whether it's a thing that you really kind of hate, or wish that you could change, or you do nothing but complain about all the time. And if you pause a second and think about the things you complain about, like what are the things that I keep coming back to and keep having issues with, you'll start to key into what those things are. And if you ever wonder like why you don't do anything about them, or if you try and it just feels like so hard to break these habits, it's so difficult, and you keep going on these endless cycles and circles, and right back to where you started from, and you're no happier, and you're even more unhappy because you think that you tried and you failed, right? And so you build up this like belief in yourself that it's not even worth trying because you're not going to get anywhere anyway. There's so much negative self-talk that goes on with this stuff, right? And you feel like it's supported by truth because it's what keeps happening over and over again. um, but what it is there's a couple things at play there. There's the tradition, there's the familiarity of whatever you have encountered or experienced the most in your life. So if you watched and it's the behaviors, the experiences that are more important than what was said to you. What was said to you, if it differs from your experiences, will feel even more fucked up, pardon my French, because you now have this like disconnect and this dissonance between what was said and what was led as an example, and that's very hard to trust things like that, right? Um, I know that most of us have had experiences with that from our parents or from teachers or people that you trusted that now you don't really trust anymore, right? Or you have some questions about. But anyway, when whatever is the most familiar thing that you have experienced is going to be something that you continually try to come back to, because what was familiar should be what you're safest in, right? Like if I'm living in a certain area of the woods or the plains or whatever in my tribal scenario, I'm going to know this area best, and it's best for me to stay within these relative bounds for the most part, because this is where I know the most about the terrain. Think of that metaphorically. This is where I know most of the challenges. I feel like I'm the best equipped to deal with these challenges because they are the most familiar to me, right? So it makes perfect sense for you to constantly try to come back to familiar things. And especially if you don't realize that there are other options, or that something on the other side of the river, so to speak, could be more pleasant or beneficial to you, and you tack that on to having denied reality of like you felt something and somebody told you something else, or they told you one thing and did another thing, and you're just kind of sitting there confused, you're going to keep reverting to these confusing practices. On top of that, you have neuroscience, right? You have all this data and research done today about how whatever you do the most is going to have the highest myelination. So the myelin sheath around the nerves, or put it this way, like your nerves are always growing. There's brain activity, like these things are growing and changing constantly. And they're growing and changing to make whatever you do most often easier because it's more efficient. Whatever you do on a regular basis, whatever thoughts you think, whatever actions are occurring within you, are going, your body, your physiology tries to make more available to you faster so that life is easier and you don't have to be thinking about stuff all the time. So I don't have to go, if I want to reach for this cup, I have to think really hard about reaching for this cup. And when those things are damaged, you think about somebody coming back from a stroke, or you think somebody coming back from any kind of nerve damage, they have to concentrate really hard. Now, that's available to us at any time. We can change things by trying really hard to, right? By putting effort into making whatever the new thing that we want more familiar than the other thing. So the thicker nerves are kind of like these highways that it's easy to drive on, and you just go to that highway, and because it feels like the easiest pathway. And so between just the way that neurology works, and the cultural upbringing that you had in whatever way it was, whatever belief systems you were exposed to, whatever feels most familiar to you, this is why you get people that seem like they're constantly working against themselves. And it's why you will fight tooth and nail to actually get back to the things that you view are harmful. Because it feels safest at the same time. It is very confusing. It can be very confusing for people. And that's also why it's really important that whatever new thing you're trying to do actually feels safe to you, right? If you're trying to make change and you're building it on top of stress, like if you're trying to work on de-stressing yourself and you keep doing that by working out harder and making your body more sore and, eating foods that are upping your stress hormones, doing all these things that are just adding to the system, you often won't get very long-term results. Even if you get short-term ones, you're just kind of continually stressing everything out. It's also why getting coaching is so important, because not only are you enlisting the expertise of somebody that has spent ostensibly years studying exactly what it is you want to do. Most of the time, coaches, whatever niche they're in, is something that they are obsessed with, or they have spent a ton of time studying. They just have more knowledge about it than you probably do, and more experience guiding people through it in different ways, and often have gone through it themselves, is what often brings people into whatever field that they're in. It's like having a guide or a map versus you just like staring at Google and all of the options that are available to you from these very well-meaning people and going, oh my God, what is this? I'm just gonna forget it, and I'm just gonna close my computer and like do something, which is great, but it's really hard because you're going blind. You don't have a map to learn it. It's like you hire somebody to help you up Mount Everest. You hope that they've actually been there before and know the terrain better than you do. That's the point of hiring a coach, to help you get up there and to show you that it's possible, right? Like they already know it's possible. And if you're working against not only like what your nerves have built over the years, and by the way, it doesn't, whatever you do most matters much more than whatever you're trying, whatever you think is best for you. That's why I like clients to do a time audit as the first week of things they do with me. It's like, well, what are you actually doing? Because that's what's shaping you, not what you wish or hope that you're doing. Your body doesn't care that you would like to have good posture if you're constantly bent over all the time. That's what's actually going to happen. Experience matters more, experience in the physical body especially. Anyway, I'm getting off track there. So when you're, what was I saying? So a coach helps you get through the woods and through these pathways, because you are not only fighting against like what your current habits are, what feels familiar to you, and you don't actually know for yourself that there is a possibility for you on the other side, the way somebody that's already been there can experience and attest to and help reassure you in times that you feel uncertain, and be there as a resource for you to continue the journey upward until you get to where you're going. You may be staring at a, I imagine like you standing on a ledge looking at this like river that you're trying to cross, and it looks really scary, but at the same time your coach is on the other side like, trust me, I promise you're going to be fine. And you're like, this looks scary as shit, I don't know what you're talking about. But when you start to walk across, you realize it's just a little uncomfortable, you get a little wet, and you and like it's really just like knee deep. You may have seen that gif that goes around the internet, a lot of the kid holding on to like the buoys or the little like floaty things that are in a like Olympic pools at the YMCA, and he's like crying, and then the person like stands him up, and it turns out he can actually stand there. It's like that kind of thing happens sometimes, but if you don't know, it's scary, and you don't know. This is going much longer than I intended it to, so I'm gonna start wrapping up. Yeah, so hopefully what I wanted you to get out of this is to understand that like what is familiar to you is going to be easiest no matter what results you're getting from it. And so that can be hard to deal with. And if you're aware of it, that can be really helpful. You just kind of have to build up the repetition so that whatever you want to replace whatever is familiar with, whatever that new life is, you need to work long enough and consistently enough to make what is the goal way of walking around the world more familiar than the way you're currently doing it, that is getting results that you don't like. Two, you want to make sure that whatever the new habit, however you're addressing and instilling the new habits, is actually done in a way that makes your nervous system feel safer, so that you have the best possible chance and opportunity to continue and maintain those new habits, because it is intrinsically rewarding and feels good to you to continue to move forward. And part of that, or three, is having a coach and a guide who can help assure you and walk you through these things. Now, you have to know that it is actually possible for you to change. If you haven't watched my 47-minute webinar, I'd please recommend you go check that out. You can see it at my website, movewelldurham.com, or you can check it out on my YouTube channel if you're watching on the channel right now. Take a look at the things that you want to do and start asking yourself, like, what are the things that are standing in my way? Maybe, I hope this helps you understand a little bit of why it's so hard to make habit change, and why, like, leveraging the use of a coach or an expert just makes so much sense. You wouldn't try to go up Mount Everest or go into new territory without having some kind of guidance. And it's going to be very different if you're like reading a Google entry on like what it's like to climb Mount Everest versus having somebody there in the trenches with you. I know there's so much information out there, and it's not impossible to go through a journey with, things that are not directly applied to you, and without somebody you can actually ask direct questions to. Like, it's possible to get through there, but oh my God, is it easier to work with somebody that is actually in your corner? So like that kind of investment just saves you so much time and energy and heartache, and not going in circles and thinking that you're making progress. And that is one other point I'll make, is like a coach can help point out to you things that you were doing and saying and experiencing in the beginning of when you started working together, and things you're doing and saying and experiencing as the track goes on, because it can be really hard to notice. You see this with parents with kids all the time, where they like don't notice the kid is growing until there's a huge difference, and you look at a picture of them from 6, 8, 12 months ago, and you're like, oh my God, like, because you're right there and you don't always see it. It can be so helpful to have an outside perspective, to call you on your bullshit, to encourage you when you're down, and to hold the line for you, because they know that it's possible and that you can do this and it's good for you. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My email address is samantha@movewellphilly.com, Philly like Philadelphia, PHILLY.com. That's where I was when I set up that website. And you can leave comments, and you can also find me on Instagram at Samantha Lifts You Up. There's a leaf outside distracted me for a moment. I love you so much. I know that you can do stuff, and I hope that I can continue to produce content that helps you understand why change is something that is happening all the time and is good for you and you can adapt to your advantage, and or that there is help available when you need it, and you just need a strong enough push and a strong enough catalyst, which is part of investing in coaching as well. I know that can feel painful to people sometimes, but the amount of return you get on somebody helping you change your life is the difference between you running in circles for years and actually making huge change in just a few weeks. And it's up to you to decide what your time is worth and if you can put a price on that. So again, I love you very much. Hopefully I'll talk to you soon, and keep on keeping on. All right.